Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. This morning I was on Facebook and I came across a couple of articles about an interview that Quinyetta McMillon did. McMillon is the mother of one of Alton Sterling's children. And as you all can recall, the brother Alton Sterling was recently killed by police in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The brother was pinned down. The police tossed him to the ground. They pinned him down. Both of his arms were pinned down. There's no evidence that he was reaching for any gun. He did not say that he was reaching for a gun. And a police officer put a gun in his brother's chest and shot him multiple times at point blank range, killing him. And there has been a lot of outrage. People have been protesting, marching in the streets. And shortly after that, there was another police killing in Minnesota. A brother was stopped by the police. The police claimed that he was stopped for a broken tail light. But more information has come out about that. But I will probably do another video about that as well. But they stopped him allegedly for a broken tail light. The officer asked him to provide his identification. The brother told the officer that he had a gun and that he was licensed to carry it, just to give the officer a heads up to let him know that he had a gun and he wasn't posing any kind of threat. The officer again, asked him to provide his ID. When the brother went to reach for his ID, that officer killed that brother, shot him at point blank range, and his girlfriend did a live stream immediately after the shooting, explaining to the public exactly what happened. And while this man was bleeding to death and breathing his last breaths, this officer still had the gun pointed at this man. And his name is Philando. The victim's name is Philando Castile. Philando Castile. So while this brother Philando Castile is dying, the officer still had the gun pointed at him. And there was a little girl in the back seat when this killing occurred. She was only 4 years old. This man is killed in front of his girlfriend and in front of a little girl. So the nation, black people and all people of conscience are outraged about what has happened. And shortly after those killings, there was a shooting that occurred in Dallas. A young man by the name of Makai Johnson allegedly killed 5 Dallas police officers and injured other officers as well. So he shot, from what I understand, a total of 12 officers. And so the press did an interview with Quinyetta McMillon and her attorney, Justin Bamberg, to discuss these killings, to discuss police brutality and all this stuff. And just as full disclosure, I want you all to know that I do know the attorney, Justin Bamberg. I worked with him years ago before he even went to law school, while he was still in college. So I just wanted to get that out the way so that you know that I do, in fact, know him. I haven't been in touch with him in years. I haven't talked to him in a while. But I just wanted to talk about this situation. So they asked her if what did she think about those who saw the Dallas shooting as an act of revenge for the police brutality against her former boyfriend. And basically she said there's no revenge in that. She said it wasn't right. And, I obviously understand why she would say that. And her attorney, Justin Bamberg, said that if someone can mourn the loss of Alton Sterling and then at the same time celebrate the killing of officers in Dallas, he said that those people have transformed into the very thing that they take issue with. They have, essentially become like the police that kill innocent black people. Now, I want to talk about that whole issue before I even go into further aspects of the interview. As I said in my live stream, I don't think that the killing of those police officers in Dallas really achieves anything. I'll say that off, from the offset, and we don't really know if that was truly the motivation or what brought this young man to commit, allegedly those killings and shooting. We don't know that with certainty. It's possible that he may have suffered from post-traumatic stress syndrome. He may have been mentally ill. We don't know all the facts, so I'm interested in the facts before I can, make further statements about this. But I will say this, as Malcolm X has said years ago, as the brother Jeremiah Wright, the great pastor Jeremiah Wright said, America's chickens are coming home to roost. For all these years, innocent black people have been killed by the police, they have been killed by white racists, and they have been killed by other races. For all these years, we have been the victims of police brutality. For all these years, we've been the victims of injustice. For all these years, this country has committed all kinds of atrocities against innocent people. And what's happening now is the chickens are coming home to roost. You can't do all this evil and all this injustice, both in this country and abroad, and not expect the chickens to come home to roost. You can't kill black people with impunity and not expect black people to eventually respond with violence. You can't deprive people of justice for decades and expect them to be docile and expect them to be passive, to expect them to be blind and weak sheep led to the slaughter. You can't do that. Any other people by now would have stood up and taken matters into their own hands. So this is just a matter of the chickens coming home to roost. And frankly, as others have said, I frankly wonder why it hadn't happened sooner. Those young people in Baltimore last year, they saw that this brother, Freddie Gray, passed away, killed at the hands of the police. And they had had enough. They took matters into their own hands. That's what happens. And I noticed that the attorney said that people have to allow the justice system to run its course. But people for far too long have sat back and allowed the so-called justice system to run its course. And when it runs its course, the people have been denied justice. The people have been deprived of justice. When the justice system runs its course often, police officers are not even indicted for killing our people. When the justice system runs its course, often, even when there is an indictment or a charge, often, more likely than not, the police walk free and our people are denied justice. And even when it's not the police, when white vigilantes or honorary white vigilantes kill our people and we allow the justice system to run its so-called course, often we are denied that justice. And one of the most sick miscarriages of justice is the case of George Zimmerman. That man shot Trayvon Martin through the heart. That man hunted Trayvon Martin, sparked a confrontation with that brother, and then ended up killing that brother. And that killer walked free. That killer is still free today. And that killer, in fact, has profited off of the death of Trayvon Martin. He profited. He won. He won the case. and he continues to exploit the tragedy that occurred. He continues to taunt the family. This man is profiting off the death of Trayvon Martin. He sold the gun that he used to kill Trayvon Martin for over $100,000. So he is literally making money off of Trayvon's death. This man has become a celebrity. People are asking for his autograph at gun shows. This man taunts the family regularly on Twitter. That's allowing the justice system to run its course. When the justice system has deprived the people of justice for so long, they will take matters into their own hands. Because the justice system is an injustice system when it comes to black people. And I understand why a lawyer would say these things, talk about allowing the justice system to run its course. I understand that that's what lawyers do. Lawyers have a different interest than the masses of the people. Family members of these victims of police brutality have a different set of interests and priorities than the masses of the people do. And I will talk about that a little bit later in this discussion. During this interview, they asked the sister, is there an issue with race, or is there a race issue? And this woman, Quinyetta McMillon, said, right now they are making it into a race issue. Right now they are making it into a race issue. See, I understand, like, what they're probably trying to do is they're trying to take race out of the equation for the sake of furthering the litigation, for the sake of furthering the case, because they probably think that if you racialize the case, that will create more polarization, and it'll be less likely that the family would recover in a civil action, or that actual criminal charges will be brought against the police officer. That's probably their strategy. They probably understand that they're in the deep South, and a lot of people will be taken aback by someone being direct and confrontational about the issue of race. They're probably thinking about what has happened to Benjamin Crump when he's brought cases, or when he's represented families, when he had, an attitude that was more upfront, an attitude that focused more on race. They're probably looking at the results of his efforts and how they were not as successful. And they're trying to take on a new approach that tries to take race out of the equation and just deal with this as a police shooting, just deal with this as a loss of a human life, to take race out of the equation so that they can be more successful in the courtroom. First of all, I understand that strategy, but that strategy is based on a falsehood. That strategy is disingenuous. That strategy is fake. When we know damn well that this situation right here is all about race. If this brother wasn't black, without a doubt, that brother would probably still be alive today. The police would have had a completely different approach if that man, Alton Sterling, was a white man. We know this. We've seen this. We've seen how the police deal with white people who are confrontational. We've seen how the police have dealt with white people who are even armed with assault rifles, armed with handguns, armed with knives. The police try to negotiate the situation. The police try to resolve the situation in a way where someone does not lose their life. That's how they deal with white people, because they view white people as human beings, and they do not view black people as human beings. They view us as subhuman. They view us as thugs. They view us as criminals. they view us as dangerous. And for that reason, their approach is shoot first and ask questions later. That's their approach. That's the reality of the situation. The stats bear this out. You know, as I've said many times, black men make up 6% of the population, but yet they are 40% of those who are killed by the police while being unarmed. Those stats are not an anomaly. Those stats are the reality. Those stats prove that this killing right here of Alton Sterling and others is not some anomaly. It's not something that just happened to occur. It's not something this rare. It is something that occurs too often, and it occurs because of race. And we can't gloss over that and pretend otherwise. See, I understand what the attorneys are trying to do. I understand what the family is trying to do. They're trying to get damages for the killing of this brother, Alton Sterling. They're trying to get a prosecution. But that doesn't address the fundamental issue. And that's where there's a divide between the activists and the family. That's where there's a divide between the attorney and the activists. Because the activists are more sincere. They are more honest. They are trying to address the bigger problem of police brutality. They are trying to address the bigger problem of racial profiling, of racism. So the people cannot afford to pretend like this doesn't have anything to do with race. And when the attorney and the family pretend that that's the case, they undermine the struggle for justice. They undermine the struggle to end police brutality. Lining the pockets of the attorneys and of the family does not fundamentally change the system that needs to be changed. Giving money to a family or even prosecuting one particular case, that doesn't prevent the next Alton Sterling from occurring. That doesn't prevent the police from continuing to racially profile black people. They talked about how, during this interview, Miss McMillon talked about how her goal is to get answers and not to divide the country. And not to divide the country. Yes, we need to have answers about what happened. But it is not the activists who are dividing the country. They're not the ones dividing the country. The police who kill our people, they're the ones who are dividing our country through their brutality against black people. The criminal justice system is the one that is dividing the country by allowing these stinking pigs to walk free. They're the ones dividing the country, not the activists who are calling out this injustice. So we have to quit throwing the activists under the bus. The family should not throw the activists under the bus by saying that the activists are making this into a racial issue, when the reality is, in fact, that it is a racial issue. You can't throw the activists under the bus by by essentially suggesting that the activists are the ones dividing the country, when it's not the activists. The activists are the ones that are in the streets trying to demand justice, not only for Alton Sterling, but for all black people who are victims of police brutality. So the activists need to be commended. The activists need to be celebrated and praised for their action. Not praised simply for being nonviolent, but praised for demanding justice for the brother Alton Sterling and others. See, when you dismiss the activists as if they're exploiting a situation or they're dividing the country, you're showing ingratitude. You're showing disrespect. And the activists deserve better than that. Because often, if it wasn't for the activists, there would be no prosecutions in many of these cases. There would be no recovery for the families without the activists. It's not just the attorneys who make it possible for these families to have some kind of justice. It's the people. Now, they went on to say, like during this interview, Ms. McMillon said that we're all humans at the end of the day. People shouldn't be judged based on a color or a race. Everybody should be treated the same. Obviously, that's true. We are humans and we should not be judged based on color or race. But it's not the activists who are doing that. It's the system that is judging us based on our race. It's the system that is judging us based on our color. It's the police who stop and harass black people who are judging based on color and based on race. And we can't pretend like that's not the case. We can't pretend like this doesn't have anything to do with race. To do so, again, does an injustice to the protesters. It does an injustice to our struggle. It undermines our struggle to end racial profiling and police brutality. So those are my comments about this situation. I'm glad that the family has an attorney to represent them. But we got to understand that the attorneys and the family, they represent their own interests. And we need to press ahead with our interests. And our interest is for justice for all black victims of police brutality. Our interest is to end police brutality. Our interest is not narrowly confined to winning some dollars for a family or winning one particular conviction. We want to change the system. Because after Alton Sterling, there'll be another person. Every other day, there's another person. So those are my comments. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Peace.